welcome to the Weed Out, where we weed out the nonsense and talk about the bullshit happening in our backyard. I'm Spencer Fox Peterson with my co-host, as always.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanna Booty.
This week, we're going to be discussing some local headlines. It's July. We're recording this the week after Independence Day. Ha ha ha. LOL. Independence from what? That's the question you should be asking. There was not much to celebrate, unfortunately. Not that there really ever has been. If you ask our marginalized fellow working class members, this country has only been free for a certain amount of people, and they tend to be white, have some money, and be men. Week prior to 4th of July, the Supreme Court finished up its session for the year, whatever, however it works, their term, I should say, and they had some really devastating decisions that Joanna and I, the reason we started the Weed Out is because we saw these domino effects coming. Roe v. Wade being overturned with the Dobbs case in 2022. We started the Weed Out in August 2022 because we could see years before this, Kavanaugh getting appointed, and go back and look at even Clarence Thomas getting appointed in 1992. You could see all this happening, and the creep to authoritarianism is speeding up. It's always been an inhospitable place for marginalized people. So this isn't anything new. It's just white people are going to be affected now. That's my opinion.
White people have been impacted in the past, typically just working class, mostly people on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. And I think now as we enter I don't think it's alarmist to most people who are paying attention at all to say that we're entering a time period where I think it's going to impact more people that are white and comfortable. And I hope that radicalizes you. I hope that it makes society wake up in a way. I hope it doesn't hurt us, but I think we will have, I think it will continue to be harmful to more and more people because we're not fixing anything that's broken. We're just barreling forward and not addressing the problem.
We are lurching in a way that, the reason we mostly work on local issues because the things we can touch is things we can affect. It's tangible, and it's important to take care of your community. People are meant to live in communities of 150 people. So let's focus on that. But, we can't ignore what's going on a national and an international scale. There's an assault on privacy. That is an autonomy. That is the through line with all these Supreme Court cases, whether directly or indirectly. It's all a challenge on individuals' autonomy and ability to live a happy, safe life. The government, supposedly, their promise to us is the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, parentheses, for certain people. And they're starting to roll back a lot of those protections. And this is going to hurt white women the most as far as take them down a step on the ladder. It's going to hurt Black women and Indigenous women even more because, white women tend to lash out on those groups. And that's how, the intersectionality of why women are split up as a block, why working class people are split up as blocks. So there's ways to put wedges between all of us. I think the reality is they're challenging our autonomy as human beings by not protecting us when it comes to climate issues, when it comes to water rights, when it comes to your children, their schooling, having a consent, and also protecting children from, parents that are abusive. And all these cases really put more power into the state and the judiciary. It's really hard to not see it if you're paying any attention. And I'm not really a law expert. So I think that's where I just see the through line of it all goes after all these cases that were decided last week or in the last 2 years, really, were about autonomy. And it's not lost on me.
Me either. It feels like basically people who fought for so many things that were considered, part of the civil rights movement have been overturned by what I would consider an extremely politically driven, biased court. Very bent on Christian nationalism being their clearly their drive. Excluding, the people.
Ketanji Brown Jackson doesn't.
Excluding, but Yeah, I was gonna say excluding like maybe 2 women and Justice Sotomayor, but I just think I don't know, I this court, in my opinion, the Supreme Court, I have some really strong feelings. I have a lot of feelings about the fact that we're following rules made up by people in their 20s hundreds of years ago, not just people, either men who owned other people. This court makes no sense to me, and they are making decisions that don't align with most people's values or what most people would do, and I don't know, I just don't know when we as a society are going to say, like, "Enough. This is enough." Like, they should not be making decisions on human rights. They have no right to do that, and they're making incredibly unethical and immoral decisions, so if there is a court that should be doing that, it's definitely not them.
And it's not just this court. It's
Oh, it's like most
all the
courts.
courts have been captured by right wing Christian. This is a 50-year plan. This is well documented.
Yes,
It
it's a
goes back to
plan.
the Southern strategy of the 60s and the flip of the parties. This was the Christian nationalist plan because they saw a multicultural nation that was going to be secular in the next 100 years. And this is the last gasp plan. And they were able for 50 years to stay on plan and get judges in positions, get ownership of media, the seven dominionist strategy of controlling every aspect of American lives, and it to lead straight to the Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now, it sounds like a conspiracy theory, right?
It does.
And it's conspiracy theory was a coin termed by the CIA to make people sound crazy. And yes, there are conspiracy theories, as a negative, as an ad hominem. Yes, there are people out there that think that the frogs are being turned gay by the vaccines or something. I don't know. But power doesn't need a written conspiracy to want to consolidate.
Right.
So it's a conspiracy, yes, that powerful interests are all have the same interests. So of course they're going to move towards the same goal, and limiting body autonomy and getting us to really fight each other is really the game. Get us mired in the muck. There's a lot of people that think there should be healthcare, right, as a right, but there's people in the healthcare argument that are, anti helping trans kids. There's people on the quote unquote left that don't want to help trans kids or kids in general, because puberty blockers and all those other things, it's not just for transitioning. It's for girls that are getting their menstrual cycle way too young.
Gender affirming care, ladies and gentlemen, like it could be just like a breast augmentation, it could be a breast reduction, it could be so many things, and it's honestly it's no one's business. It should be between like a person and their doctor, or a child's parent and their doctor. I just don't understand how a group of people who are considered conservative and have values about certain things about, like, states' rights and privacy and freedom could think that any of what they're saying makes any sense even. Not only is it horrifying, it doesn't even align with what they would want happening to them at all. At all.
And again, there's a lot of disinformation out there. We're all mired down in our muck, so don't feel it sounds like we're fighting boogeymen here and shadow boxing, and maybe whoever's listening may feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough, or I don't know what you're talking about. Don't feel bad, because you know what, you're meant to be kept busy. You're meant to be fighting with each other over semantics. And hey, I'll be the person to raise their hand. I get dragged into the muck too, and forget the big goal and get overwhelmed with all this information. So, gonna just we could talk all day about Christian nationalism, Joanna and I.
Absolutely.
That's not the point of this episode. If anybody wants to hear us talk more about that, write to us, let us know. This is a good time to remind everybody that you can go to our website, www.theweedout.com, get any information that we mention on any episode. Find us on all the social medias. We are now on Threads. We're on the Substacks. We're on the Twitters, the TikTok. We do all the things. because that's where people are, and we want to get the word out, and we want to share stories of working class people and let yard. So this week we're going to talk about headlines, and we're going to share all these headlines on our episode notes, and you can find us on the social media. So please reach out story that we should highlight, or whether it's in the news already. Happy to do that. And it's all about workers' rights. It's all about putting things in perspective and tackling problems that are actually we can get our hands around. So normally Joanna and I are very focused on the police, for example, because when the water wars start, when these mandates from these 9 justices in robes come down, who the fuck's going to enforce it? Yeah, your fellow working class cop friend down the street. Sorry, bro, I'm just doing my job, just following orders. Yeah, fuck that. And they're already doing these dystopian things. The whole idea of policing goes back to slave catching. Slaves were considered property. Slaves, quote unquote, don't exist anymore. They do via the slavery as a punishment for crime. And what is crime? We talk about this every day. But from protecting property like buildings and businesses and catching slaves because they were considered property, now they protect property. They didn't start protecting us. That's not their mandate. The Supreme Court has ruled about things like qualified immunity, and is it the police officer or the government's responsibility, because the police are part of the government, is the government's responsibility to preemptively save people? The Supreme Court's ruled no. So we all disagree with that. The government should be helping people and protecting people when they can. It's what they, that's what they claim. Joanna and I are not purists about. Joanna, are we purists about the U.S. government?
Oh no. I mean, that's why when what I said earlier about our founding fathers might shock people, but it shouldn't.
Right, and that's why it says we're not advocating daddy government come save us. We're trying to empower all the listeners that we save us.
Yes, like it's our money, our tax dollars are funding the government. Like you should have democracy, like you have at the local level, or like you would have in a union type of voting situation where your vote is actually counted. The electoral college is like this bullshit sham thing. Like there are just so many systems in place that are not broken. They're put there to keep this bullshit running down a track. And I guess we're just kind of the people that can't stop pointing it out. And I can't apologize for that either. I hope someday that I don't have children. I have nieces and nephews, and I care about all of your children as much as I would care about them and any child. And I want a better world. I've always wanted a better world. And I think we should all want that. And I don't mean to go back to Christian nationalists, but I do want to just say they don't want that. They plan for their life in heaven. And I think that's something to think about because this is our time here on this earth. And I don't know, I just really want people to be more present, not afraid, because we don't need to be afraid. We are not unsafe. We are each other's neighbors. We keep ourselves safe. We are strong. We are able, like, look at all the money that we put into taxes and all of the things we get or that the people in government get. Um, Look to how quickly they fixed that issue on I-95. There are ways to do things. The money is just being used in ways to harm us rather than to help us in most scenarios. And the police are most often the culprits, holding our towns and cities kind of like in this limbo or this place where they're telling you, okay, well, I'm not going to do my job, which no one else has the ability to really do at a state or municipal level unless you give me this 10% raise that I want, yada, 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 whatever number that it is. And I think that's why we end up focusing there, Spence, if I'm not wrong, because at the local level, it's even more obvious that it's like your tax dollars and it's all of our tax dollars. Even if you don't pay into it specifically, if you buy a candy bar in my town, or you drive through my town to get to your town, or you just live in Massachusetts, we should really all care what's going on here and how the money is being used.
Um, yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. And it's disheartening. Um, it's tiring. But like you said, we can talk about what's going on in our backyard. So let's get to the headlines. What do you say?
I totally say let's do it. And like I said too, we are not unsafe. We are safe. We are neighbors. We have each other. And it's although disheartening, it also should feel empowering to know what you can do and that you can be heard and that there are actions that you can take.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's get to the headlines. We got some good ones, we got some not surprising ones. The shoestring.org, our favorites, are reporting Trader Joe's United walks out in support of fired worker. Walkout is the latest escalation in a campaign against the allegedly retaliatory firing. So, if y'all don't know, the Trader Joe's United is the union that started in our little backyard in Hadley, Massachusetts. Kudos to them.
Woo!
Just like the Barnes and Noble Hadley, they're actually in roughly the same shopping area.
They are.
They're across the street from each other, but it's right near the Hampshire Mall in Hadley, Massachusetts on Route 9 between Northampton and Amherst on the way to UMass.
If you know, you know.
Shout out. Apparently, according to pieces like the New York Times and the Atlantic, we have like a little commie stronghold up here in Hadley, Massachusetts forming. It's like, yeah, that's what happens when you have people that read books.
I know. They like called it like an overeducated area. And I'm like, well, it's called the five college area, I guess.
But the people that are working in these jobs forming these unions aren't all like, yeah, I'm sure some.
No. So some of them are.
I know these people, the transient people, the people coming and going, but the people that are going to be in the long haul for this fight for the unions are people that live here and aren't
Absolutely
who aren't just students. So fuck you, New York Times, fuck you, Atlantic, for not in any of your implications. It's like, I'm a college educated person, but I'm 36 years old and I live in the area and I'm a laborer. I lift shit up and I put things down. And if people like me are fighting for a union, we're not doing it for fun, for clout for 2 years. And then we're going to go on to, wherever we got to go to get at work once our college degree is up. These people are working people who live here full time and are multi generations deep most of the time because their great grandparents used to have unions when the factories fucking existed out here. There is a long union tradition in Western Mass, is the point. And so don't act shocked.
for sure.
So I'll just read the top headline real quick and we'll just discuss it and then we can keep moving. So basically, this was fired to do with, them forming a union to remove some power equipment, some like a saw, and it wasn't their property to remove, and they refused. So they got fired for that. On 4th of July weekend on Saturday, members of the Trader Joe's United walked out on the busy 4th of July weekend shift on Saturday in solidarity with a member of the union they claimed was unjustly fired last month. And since this article is written, there was a call in where the union was asking customers to call in and complain to management about this unjust firing. And they took the phones off the hook. The managers unhooked the phones so they didn't have to answer the phone, which is incredibly unsafe.
Should people still be calling in though? That's what I was wondering. Because if so, like I didn't know if it should be going on all week or
personally, even if the union's not asking you for it, you can say, I don't know, I just heard you fired somebody for some bullshit. Don't even say the union told you to call.
well, I wasn't going. Yeah, I was gonna say people should go to Instagram to like find they have like a little script and what to do or whatever.
This is good. This is the power of a union. It's not about
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
and it's about your coworkers feeling, because I've been in situations in my work life where you're working in a kitchen and everybody kind of agrees with the person that's the black sheep or is getting blamed for something, but they're afraid.
Mhm.
We all may say like, yeah, like, okay, let's fucking tell the boss off. And then when it comes down to it that morning, people be like, I don't know, let's just try to work through it. But when you have a union behind you and you have people that have already agreed and put their pen to paper, there's a confidence there and people will feel confident about walking out, and walking out, withholding your labor. It's one of the most unviolent things you can do. I'm going to put a hurt on your pocketbook and you can't fire all of us. And this is all over you firing somebody for some shit that's not theirs. and you were mad that they said no to you, and they're like, I'm not removing some property that's not mine. That seems like a crime. I mean, that's me paraphrasing there. It's good news. We're really happy. Thank you, Shoestring. We will link this in the headline. I mean, in the website notes. Joanna, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, sure. It's the beekeeper story, which we've talked about in the past on other episodes because we're really like I just love this woman and kind of what she was willing to do for so at first Spencer and I were talking about it before was recorded and it had seemed like at the time so backstory she's someone who the first story we had shared was this woman in Hadley has been accused of releasing bees on a sheriff's deputy when they stopped to an eviction at a Longmeadow apartment or a home.
And anybody listening that's not familiar there, Longmeadow and Hadley aren't exactly close to each other.
So I was at first I wasn't. So her name is Rebecca Susan Woods, and she's of Hadley. And so she finally appeared in court this past Wednesday morning. But the first article that I read, I was under the impression that maybe it was like a place she owned. But like Spencer just mentioned, Longmeadow is kind of a it's not super far, but it's like a trek in Western Mass. Like it's like a probably half hour, maybe, right?
minimum 30 minutes.
Okay, yeah. So it's a little bit of a drive. So she was actually driving to she drove her bees apparently um to a home. It doesn't really say in this article whose home it is. But it was an ongoing eviction. And she pulled up and left her dog in the car, got a beehive out of a trailer she had and angered the bees and put on her like bee costume and of course, like this, some of the stuff in this report, like I don't know because it could be fed from the police, but it's saying that like multiple officers were stung, some were allergic. And yes, I know that people can be allergic to bees, but I do think that Woods um putting on a professional bee suit to protect herself and potentially someone she clearly must care about or want to, not have be evicted. Using bees is just such an interesting and creative way to try to protect oneself. Um, and of course, I think the police, I'm sorry, like
They were there to violently attack somebody.
take someone out of their home. She was just I know that it's wrong to hurt someone and like be violent with someone, but her charges are assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. So that's the bees apparently. Assault by means of a dangerous weapon and disorderly conduct. And I just feel like disorderly conduct is one of those other charges that I just want people to think about because we talk about crime a lot, Spence, and how it's just like such a construct. Like these people could just like make up what disorderly conduct is.
Yeah, I mean, some of the shit I say at a bar when I'm upset with my arms in the air and I'm upset about, cops killing people and I'm just exasperated, like that could be disorderly conduct. It's totally subjective. So yeah, and this is what
But this story, I do love this woman though. Like shout out to you, Rebecca Susan Woods. I hope she has a good lawyer. But it's a crazy story, crazy story.
I mean, the reality is she did do something that you could quote unquote see as a crime. I would never, as a lawyer, argue against that. What I do think is interesting is the fervor and the poor framing and the lack of information and a lot of insinuation in the journalism.
Yes.
To paint the picture that the police are innocent. It's like, no, they were there to evict someone. And
you're gonna
made
pull someone out of their home.
And the framing was interesting because
it was.
They didn't frame her as a protector. They framed her as a resistor. Like so they
and like an assailant.
They kind of implying that they were the squatter.
Right. I thought she lived there.
Yeah.
At first. I had to read it a few times.
No, the reality is she's a fucking working class hero, people.
Right, she is. She is.
And the reality is this was on purpose. She maybe she's not physically strong, so she used what she could use to put her body or put a barrier between the police and a violent eviction.
Yeah, whoever this was.
They didn't frame her as a working class hero. And yes, she may have broke a law and she may serve jail time because she broke that law. It used to be a crime to be a witch. And in my opinion, this person, if God was judging, if Sky Daddy was fucking real and they saw that he saw this, Jesus saw this, Jesus was doing this shit.
Yeah, he'd be like, "Rock on, lady. I want to be here for Halloween. She's my hero."
He wouldn't say like, you're not coming to heaven because you civilly disobeyed the men with the badges. No, he'd be like, why the fuck are you kicking somebody out of a home? Why do you have home for
Exactly.
profit? Why do you have commodities? And why is the power of the state being used?
And I mean, even for those people who think like, "Oh, that's so radical," like, I'm sorry, but if you're like a landlord and you need to like you need to try to go to mediation and work with like people, your day's gonna come otherwise like this. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. Putting people out on the streets, like, what kind of country are we? We're supposedly such a great place where like everyone's taken care of. Like, we need to wake up to that. And Rebecca, bringing her bees in, like you said, Spencer, I'm sorry. She is trying to keep people in a house, and the police are doing the fucking exact opposite.
So all these things can be true at once. She could have broken a law. She could have assaulted.
Yeah, laws are also like, you know what I mean?
That it does not equal fucking morality is our point, and that's what we're trying to
No.
point out, and that's why it's shady. The journalism and the capitalist bias by everybody, including the readers, and I'm calling y'all out. Listening, you got to think about this frame, how things are framed, and when you see details missing, why they're missing.
Yeah, like what narrative are they forming or framing for you to then think up in your mind? I started wondering like what's missing and why. I kept reading it and reading it over and over again. But I don't think I'm not saying anyone should have to do this, but I almost felt like I wasn't understanding it.
You should just assume that the media, corporate and legacy media entities, whether it's Fox News, CNN, or Mass Live, which is a corporate media entity that's selling ads for clicks and all that stuff, you have to assume they're going to have a capitalist bias. And capitalists put human necessities behind paywalls and gatekeep that and then enforce it with violence. And I'm sorry. We don't say the C word around here very often, communism. And it's,
Oh, I was like,
we say cunt all the time.
I literally wondered which C word. Oh my God.
And it's not because we don't believe in those tenets and we don't find those economic systems interesting and possibly very viable. So we focus on the people that enforce these awful systems because that's just what upsets us. This is all part of a bigger piece. So whatever interests you in all of this, we just mentioned 5 different facets of the working class struggle. Whether it's the media, whether it's the role of the police, whether it's the role of the law and the courts, or internalized biases, right? So this woman was a working class hero. Yes, she technically committed a crime. It was a crime to be a fucking witch. I don't care. I don't care. That's not a disqualifier for me. It's not. So like, and this is so when people ask, well, what about Donald Trump? I don't care. I don't care that he stole nuclear documents. Like, no shit, this dude did something so totally irresponsible, totally fucking dangerous. But why do we have fucking nuclear codes? Like, let's ask that question. Like, why are we giving that power to fucking anybody? What? So like it's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
I think Donald Trump is a bad person who does not care about other people. I don't care about his crimes personally.
Yeah.
So when the media is trying to spin it as something, listen, man, Donald Trump stole nuclear codes and he's walking on the street.
Yeah, he sucks.
All right. So if you give a fuck about laws, like, I don't know what to tell y'all. Like that should be, if you're worried about this beekeeper protecting somebody to keep them in their home and using bees, yes, somebody could have died from an allergic, but she didn't use a gun. She didn't use a bow and arrow. She didn't use a bomb. We have to encounter bees as human beings in the world.
I know, like, technically, that's how I feel. Like, you don't have your EpiPen with you. And not to say that they should get stung. But it's like, if I'm deathly allergic to anything, I carry my fucking EpiPen with me too. So just throwing that out there.
I don't want anybody. I think there's like that's a shitty way to die. To basically get so inflamed and swollen that you died. Like that's a sounds
I
awful.
know, but, like, I think she was just
You were
trying to,
trying
like,
to evict somebody. You were going to slowly torture somebody to death and like make them live on the street. So like, what are we talking about?
yeah, like, I think she was just trying to probably scare them away and, like, I don't know, they're bees, it's like animals, so, like, I know it's wrong, but it's just a very interesting and funny story to me.
She likely is invoking her Fifth Amendment right to silence through the media.
Well, and lawyers often don't want you talking if it's, like, an ongoing case, yada, yada.
Look what the state will do to you.
Oh, yeah, they make you look ridiculous, it's insane.
Look what the journalists will the corporate journalists and the corporate entities will because of their bias. It's not necessarily an explicit agreement. They have a bias towards capital.
And the police are probably sending them, like, press releases, so they're, like, just publishing.
Because this person is remaining silent, there's an and then there's the reader, the average American, because we're baked in fascists. Like, let's just face it, people. Like, we get in arguments with people on the internet, Joanna and I, a lot, and even with people that have good values, even people that we think have good values who are in fucking total denial. There is a fascist thread in every American.
Well, it's like all of us, if you're a white person, this is an unpopular opinion. You are racist, or you would have inherently racist either beliefs or way of acting, and it's not your fault. All you have to be doing, what you should,
It's your responsibility.
it's what you should be doing is focusing on addressing racism every day, self reflection, and working on being a better member of society and a better member of your community and building community. It doesn't mean that, again, that you're a bad person. It just, you can't be a white person and not have been indoctrinated with white supremacy. If you grew up in America, that's just a hard truth. And I think it's actually much easier once you accept it, because it just means that you can grow and there is so much beauty and joy in that growth, despite it being hard.
And we're white people, and we're calling you in. We're not calling you out. We're like, hey, man,
Yeah.
it's not other. It's not black women. It's not indigenous women. It's not indigenous men's responsibility to fucking straighten this out. It's on us. So you have to just
Yeah.
take responsibility for it. This is, you know, we are both quite honest about like our biases that we are unpacking every day,
And
every day.
yeah, and I don't necessarily share all of them on this podcast. I'm probably sharing them with Spence and stuff, but like we all have them. We all need to be, like he said, we need to be unpacking those daily. It's a journey, it's a process. But yeah, like we're here if anyone needs to talk, because Spence is right. Like, it is not our Black brothers and sisters, our friends who are of color who face oppression. It is not their responsibility to coddle you or explain to you anything,
Or to hear you're arguing about
or
how
to
there's
hear any of your bullshit.
about
Yeah.
like deflection about like, well, it's I mean, if we just everybody's got to shut the fuck up.
And don't, like, they don't need you to apologize for them to them about how, you're sorry you're not racist. Don't do that. Just reflect internally. Contact us if you want to talk. A therapist is always great. A lot of times you can find someone who has values that are anti-racist and will work on stuff with you, where growth is important. But I know that's hard to achieve too, and that's something that comes with a privilege. But reading, like, read some really good books. Like right now I'm reading um We Do This Until We Free Us. And it's an amazing read. And next I'll read Let This Radicalize You. But I just think there's some really good books right now. I'll share both books and authors on links for this episode. I just think there are some really good authors right now, especially authors, Black authors, women, Black men. I mean, all different people, non-binary individuals. I just think there are so many things right now that you can learn and find information so quickly, using technology, which is such a great thing, and it can be bad. But if you embrace the good thing, like finding these great books or being able to connect directly with the author and ask questions sometimes, And like I always shout out to Oleemi on every Twitter mostly, but on every basically platform. I don't know. I just think there are a lot of people out there just doing such good work or saying things that we should be listening to and absorbing that I think it's kind of uplifting if you think about it that way too.
It's on you. It's your responsibility, and we can make a better society. And I'm not going to shame Beekeeper Lady. I know we just went on a 20-minute tangent, but we're not going to shame her. She did the right thing.
No, free her, free her.
If Sky Daddy existed, that's not a sin.
No, she's the shit. I love that lady.
So moving on, just going to do some quick hitters. Multiple budgets got passed, and
Hell yeah, they did.
and then the one big one didn't. So real quick, we'll share the links to the budgets being passed. We won't get into line items because I think we will want to implode because we never seem to agree with how our local municipalities spend their money on their quote unquote public safety versus their poop tubes, aka the DPW. Anyways, so Holyoke passed $163.7 million budget. It frees up a little free cash for emergency expenditures. I'm sure like snow removal overages and police overtime overages and whatever you can't predict. Greenfield passed a $61.6 million budget. It's a 6.5% increase from 2022. They did cut the police and dispatch budget, lol.
Woo, woo, woo,
That's
woo,
what our
woo.
notes say. But
They did.
that doesn't really necessarily mean anything because there's grants and all sorts of things they that doesn't come out of the official budget, so it comes out of another budget somewhere. So you're still paying for taxpayer, and I hate that term. It's so fucking colonialist. Colonizing. Uh, Pittsfield passed a $200 million budget. And Joanna, this is kind of your neck of the woods, so I kind of want to give you.
So this is my hometown. Pittsfield did pass the $200 million budget. A lot of it is like it's bigger than Holyoke and Greenfield. Clearly much smaller in comparison. Pittsfield is the biggest municipality in the Berkshires. They do have a large police force, so I'm guessing that was a big item. The school systems are a big item in Pittsfield. There are two high schools, two middle schools, multiple elementary schools. So I'm hoping I have to go through it again to kind of see, like Spencer said, we're not going line item by line item. I'm happy in a way that they're like not that they have the ability to have such a budget where they also are putting money towards parks and rec stuff. I know Pittsfield personally has some really beautiful parks that they do keep up, and that they are putting some money to this budget season. That said, I do think for the taxpayers of Pittsfield, and like Spencer said, this is terrible, but for homeowners especially, like income taxes are, or excuse me, property taxes are really, really high. So I do wonder for people who are struggling with mortgages and property taxes, if a $200 million budget has some stuff that could be adjusted and cut for the people to really have some relief. But again, I'd really have to dive in. I just want to remind people too about Greenfield passing the 61.6 million. That difference there between Pittsfield and Greenfield is due to the population and the needs of the community. And so I just want to remind people, we've said it in multiple episodes, that Chief Haig up in Greenfield gets $175,000 a year with his promised raises and pension. So Greenfield is one of those towns that's literally being defunded by their police. And I just think we need to look to them for a lot of the examples, like the things that they cut in the police budget. When I did look over that too, it's stuff that the police kind of messed up. Like they had a lawsuit where they lost money, and they're getting grants that will cover things. So that's being spun, like Spencer mentioned, to be much more than it really is.
Yeah, and this is the nuance, and each budget in each town has its own unique story. And a budget is, as always, as we always say, it's a story, and it's a story of your values.
Yes.
Sidebar: we've had some heavy rainstorms. There is sewage flowing from many municipalities along the Connecticut River and poisoning the rivers, and beaches are being closed on the East Coast during the hottest time of the year. We just had the 4 hottest days on the planet, and beaches are being shut down
Yeah, my favorite beach was closed, it said, and, like, I was just so sad, so sad.
because in places like with crumbling infrastructure, like West Springfield, Holyoke, all these towns up and down the Connecticut River, starting up north at Greenfield too, and Pittsfield, their water feeds into the Connecticut River. So investing in cops and military weapons seems kind of fucking stupid when we're literally dumping shit into our water sources. We can't even go cool off when it's hot. The water is becoming more scarce. Like, what are we doing here? If for no other reason alone, you should care about what we're doing with our human excrement, or else we'll have another Black Plague during a global climate collapse. And it doesn't take a scientist to tie all this shit together. It's osmosis, man. It all goes through the same fucking cycle. And so poop into the rivers needs to be dealt with. And Chief Haig does not need $170,000 to run a racist organization, because that's where they lawsuit. They lost their money on them being fucking racist. And in Holyoke, there's going to be workman's comp and fucking all sorts of liability with guys that can't manage their fucking guns, losing their guns and pointing their guns.
And that guy that did the sexual, like, potentially, like, alleged sexual assaulting to that other officer, the female officer, that's shady fucking too.
Captain Reyes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fucking shady as shit too.
And, Officer Reyes, sorry. Gotta give you your disrespectful title. Fuck you.
Alleged sexual assaulter, Reyes.
Officer Reyes. Because the officer part would piss him off.
Yeah, I'm just a lot of things would piss him off.
Anyways, so yeah, like these budgets are values. We need to look into them. We'll dive into them a little bit deeper. But the work for next year's budget, so we can divest from these pigs, these bastards, these cops with guns, we can fix possibly poop going into the rivers.
Yeah, like why wouldn't we want to fix infrastructure that's allowing like it's old infrastructure basically. I've been reading like over
Those are jobs.
Well, I've been reading over the weekend and it's basically saying that like the infrastructure we have in place isn't prepared to handle like what we have happening with the climate and the flooding so frequently that basically like the last few summers, if you're anyone like me, I'm a big swimmer, everybody. So shout out to my like Pisces and or swimmer people, water signs, whoever you are. But, like, for real, like, I just have noticed, like, by mid-July, August, at the like, early August, if it stays really hot and there's a lot of rain, so I started reading up on it, and it makes total sense, like, our systems overflow because they have only a certain capacity, but the overflow is into a fucking water supply, and I'm just there has to be a better way. These are outdated systems, and that is money that like if the police really cared about our safety, including their own, because my god, eventually like
Fucking water.
the yeah, it's like water, it's water, so eventually it's not just going to be where you want to swim, it's going to be other sources of water that are important. And I think these systems, I read something in this weekend where it was like these systems were built when there was so much the person wrote when there was so much less shit going into the systems, there were so many less people in general. It's like y- I don't know when all of our systems were built in Massachusetts, but they're probably old as shit at this point, 50 years or more.
They just replaced the pipes in my neighborhood, like my whole system, and they were 100-year-old.
So I was going to say it could be 100 years. I just didn't want to like date myself. But so 100 years ago, there were way less people. And this person's right. Like we're pumping way more like doo doo into the rivers, apparently. And I just think, like you said, like I live near a lake in Shutesbury, and I sometimes will head up there on a hot afternoon. And this past Friday, I was thankful to see like a number of families bringing their little ones. A super diverse, fun crowd, but it was packed, like capacity. And to think that that water supply will eventually be potentially poisoned to the point where people can't swim in it is just why would you allow motorized boats? Why would you have sewage flowing into it. It just makes no sense to me. And I think, again, our budget is our value system. And we really need to prioritize things that, like the outdoor spaces, are so important, just overall. It's our environment.
Poop tubes over popo.
Yeah, man. We all got a doo doo.
So good news is the good news is these local municipalities, though flawed, did get their budgets passed. Great.
No, they did. They did. Props to them.
We have a plan to like not completely implode for a year, so that's good. Let's see if it works
Totally.
out. I'm glad that they, there's because even in the Holyoke government, I mean, there are some decent folk people with good value systems, and I'm sure this budget doesn't agree with their values. I won't speak for them. There's other people. It's actually kind of surprising with the opposition forces that don't have good values that they're actually able to come to some sort of agreement. It's actually shocking, to be frank with you, and which is what leads us into like kind of the nice little end to budget season. So the Massachusetts state legislature, a supermajority Democrat, vote blue no matter who, everybody, can't pass a budget. This party has total fucking control and they can't pass a budget and they're worried about millionaires leaving the state. If you make sure that the fucking working class, lower, middle, whatever, have money to spend, then your precious consumerism capitalist economy booms. The people at the bottom need money to fucking spend. And if you're worried about a 5 millionaires threatening to leave, no, they like living here. They just fucking don't want to pay their taxes. Fuck them. Like, and let them go if that's the case. You'll have more taxpayers spending more money. Millionaires sit and billionaires sit on money. It's bad for the economy. You're like, I'm not even a capitalist. I fucking hate capitalism. But like, how do I understand your system better than you?
You don't. I don't think they're just being little assholes. But I hear you. Heard.
What the
It's fucked. It's
I'm not even getting into my altruistic, like everybody should have housing, everybody should have water. I'm not even getting there. I'm just like, the plebes on the bottom spending money, you fucking idiot. Like,
I know.
you need to keep us busy and grinding. Like, what are you doing? What are you fucking doing?
It is. It's so whack.
And this is why vote blue no matter who's trash. And like, I know there's plenty of people who I kind of get along with who think that you gotta do harm reduction and vote for the no, like yes, or whatever. I don't care. That's the thing. I'm a democracy first person. Vote how you're gonna vote. I'm just gonna not pretend that these two parties aren't interested in the same fucking thing.
Money and power. But yeah, their ties are to corporate. And I mean, since Citizens United came into play in 2010, I think, like honestly, at this point, and then like after the Bush Gore stuff, where like no one cares about the Electoral College, really, like we're just pretending that doesn't happen. I think we're kind of like at this point where the money in politics is just driving everything, and one party says it nicer than the other. And I mean, they do like give you autonomy over your body sometimes, some of the Democrats.
But the Democrats, so this is the thing. Like, we can have a nuanced conversation here. The binary is the problem. Yes. Is us saying the Democrats aren't our friends saying that the Republicans are? Absolutely fucking not. They have actual Nazis. They have people that are proud of the Confederate flag and the Nazi flag, and they go in open spaces with it.
Right.
To their two GOP events, whether it's an insurrection or it's a political rally or it's a protest against protest. Like, that's the people that roll. Yeah, you're not going to see a Nazi flag when you're around people that say vote blue no matter who, and that's yeah. But like, okay, cool. So maybe we should abolish the Republicans completely and say fuck off until you have serious ideas, and then have a working class coalition.
There should be more than two parties. I mean, again, you said in 92 earlier. You mentioned though earlier in the early 90s before, and like we haven't had like someone like Ross Perot where there was like almost a third party candidate happen. And I don't know if we ever will again, but Cornel West is running Green Party. And I know there's controversy there, but I love Cornel.
Yeah, I get worried about like because there is a reality, and again, there's an argument about like, have third parties been weaponized? Absolutely. No, we need to break up
Uh, they have been, yeah.
Like there's why can't there be multiple aisles? Why does there only have to be one? Why can't there be like parliaments are
Well,
run?
yeah, there should be multiple parties.
Not to form coalitions with different groups because not everybody is a fucking monolith.
That's the thing. The part one big party is, to me, very odd.
It's a monopoly. So if you believe in human rights, you have to go with the Democrats, even though they only kind of believe in human rights.
I was gonna say it's like just a little bit. I just think they're already trying to smear like Cornell though. Like this is the funny part about the Democrats. They're already trying to be like Cornel West is going to take Democratic votes and then maybe lose the election for Biden, and it's like really,
He's probably going to drop out.
also just like really,
It's going to be Biden Trump.
it just, that's not even what happened last time. Like anyone come at me about the data from 2016. Like no third Jill Stein voters, no third party voters, nothing like that did this. Um the Electoral College and Trump and Hillary Clinton's actions throughout the entire election, whether strategic or not strategic enough on either side, I could give you a whole fucking earful. So just there's no reason to blame other parties that emerge. We should be encouraging that. It's just demonizing others.
We should get rid of the Electoral College.
Yeah, and that's no one's focus. No one's focusing on that ever. And it's kind of crazy.
It's like you're playing a rigged game. So like, what are we even talking about? But like, yeah, I mean, in ranked choice voting has shown to get better results, and it forces
Absolutely.
not concessions, but more clarity on your platform instead of wishy-wash. Like Maura Healey, I'm going to be more transparent, and then she has the same transparency rules as fucking Charlie Baker because it doesn't matter. Like she can promise whatever she fucking wants. And sorry, that's my weird little beef with her because I don't know. There's again bigger fish in the sea. Yes, if let's just face it, it's going to be Biden Trump. I think we should abolish the U.S. Constitution and write a new one. So I don't really give a fuck. But are we better off with Biden? Yes, definitely. But that doesn't stop the mechanisms of local government and state governments that have been put in place that are fascistic and authoritarian and or incompetent or corrupted by money and politics, like we have in our state legislature. Even though there's no awful ideologues that we can see and we live here, yeah, we don't have to deal with awful ideologues. We have to deal with people with no scruples, no morals, and only give a fuck about their corruption, which is scary. So when people say Massachusetts is a great place, I'm like, no, because they'll say one thing and then do what's best for them later and get away with it because they're never going to get kicked out but for being unethical because they have a stranglehold on the levers of power. It's like, okay. Anyway, so we need to dilute this process. We need ranked choice voting. I also don't think we should have this current. I don't think any of it should exist. Like all of it's arbitrary and made up. So, that's why I focus on the bleeds. I can actually wrap my head around that. There's too many options. I'll be frank with
It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
you. Lots. So like, don't take our word for it. Please form thoughts. Just don't swallow this shit as acceptable, though. You don't have to.
It's not acceptable.
Don't anybody tell you that you're being undemocratic if you vote. Fuck you. Telling somebody how to vote. I don't.
Is
I'm not
ridiculous.
over here
Vote.
telling Trumpers to not fucking vote.
Oh God. Vote how you want. If you don't vote, don't vote. Like do what you feel.
Please vote. Like the whole idea of saying some people shouldn't vote, like,
Well, like if someone doesn't want to vote though, like as a protest or whatever their right is, that's their right too. But
no, I'm saying when people say, like people have said to us on the internet, because it's the internet,
oh yeah.
get a vote because you have radical ideas. Only people in
Yeah, that's fascism and like to a T.
so yeah, anybody says you're throwing your vote away, fuck you.
I want to vote how I vote. That's how
How
it
else
is.
do you send a message? How else do you do it? I mean, yes, there's a million other ways, but like with that ballot, with that specific tool, like that's the tool. I don't know. I'm a big fan of using every tool at your disposal, and a ballot is a tool.
Yeah, me too. It's like the system is super flawed, but I always show up for a vote. And I understand why there are so many people that don't. But I still participate because I'm hopeful that like it may change things someday.
Imagine if we got 100% voters turnout, which we don't even break 50%. So
Oh no, we don't.
any election, let alone local. I mean, local's abysmal.
Local, it's like a 10%, 11% is high in my town.
If we could get like, if say in a miracle you got 100% of eligible voters out to vote, it would break the system, and that'd
It
be
would be
fucked.
crazy. I was gonna say, like, even if you got 80% out, it would break the system.
Who knows?
Oh, the system couldn't handle it. Like,
Who knows?
think of how the lines are at polling places already in certain states you hear when there's like a general election.
So I say we break the system, and that's a non-violent way you can break it. I don't
I
know.
mean, yeah,
Let's get
that
out
would
and
be
vote. I mean, yeah, that's it's like the least you should be doing, everybody. Please vote, even if it means filing a ballot with nothing on it.
yeah, like you can vote third party or write in people. Like I just think it's important to let like the people that are saying like, "Oh, it's democracy." Like, well, okay, then I'm going to fucking vote for who I want to vote for.
Democrats love saying like we love democracy. All right, then make vote as the court. Like that's Biden's excuse about the court right now. I don't want to politicize. It will end in never-ending politicization.
It is politicized. They've politicized themselves.
Politicized to the Republicans' advantage for yes. It's like yeah, fuck these people. uh, cop bad cop.
It's frustrating.
It's dark, and so whenever you are feeling like if I just vote blue, think again.
And usually that is like the safest bet, like we said. But it doesn't mean people who voted for Jill Stein or who vote for like a workers' party or who are interested in something else are like ruining the system or getting Trump elected. Like that is the two-party system pitting you against your neighbors so that you fight. It's just bullshit. It doesn't make any sense.
We've kind of jumped all over the place and how the headlines tie into our bigger picture. One small late breaking news out of this, some bonus news on the headlines. The chief of police of Pittsfield has retired.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Peace out.
Fuck you.
Peace out, Chief Win.
I'm sure some scandals are sure to follow.
There's been a lot going on with Pittsfield implementing the body cam stuff finally, which I know we're against, but Pittsfield was late to the game, so now they're finally getting it after community wanting it. They're fucking it up already. Yeah,
And so he's probably involved in that. I mean, he has to be.
he put it off. He kept like delay. It was delayed a lot until I think because of him retiring and stuff. It's taken a really long time.
Because he probably was going to lose support of his staff that were
Yeah,
demanding he hold it off, and he couldn't hold it off any longer. So, and this is us speculating, so don't take this as fact. This is not reporting. Just trying to like show you that there's a pattern to all this because we've seen this story a million times. Miguel Estrella was killed 2 years ago
hmm
or a year ago. A year ago.
why?
Regardless, I'm sure there might be something about that investigation, internal investigation that will come out. Um,
Yeah,
there's plenty of tragedies that police chiefs are implicitly or explicitly involved in.
right.
So, we'll see. We'll be following that. We'll see what happens when people start.
Yeah, I do want to follow and we'll see what he does next too, because for a while he was like one of the advisors to Baker for like the police commission, like reform stuff. So I went, hmm?
He was involved in that investigation that Andrew covered in Egremont.
Yeah. So yeah, because he's like, but so I wonder what he'll do next. Like, I mean, he's retiring pretty young, so I'm sure he might do more. He might do something else. So I'm wondering what that might be. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that.
That's it for headlines. Ghoulery and tomfoolery. We're gonna have to do it, and I'm gonna go off the top of my head, Joanna. So this is totally surprising to Joanna, and I'm just thinking about it right now. In France, there is uproar not hearing about it. That's the ghoulery and tomfoolery. There's been police killings of Arab men. And if you know anything about the history of imperialism in France, they have really played a giant role in decimating North Africa, the global South, and in the Middle East. They play an oversized role in that. It's not just the Brits and the Americans and the Soviets. The French were pretty brutal. and they've been pretty awful to Arab immigrants the last 20 years post 9/11. And Bruce now, and there's been violent uprisings against their police, and it's not getting reported in legacy media here. So we just wanted to share that with everybody. And Joanna, would you like to, I don't know, add anything to that?
There are clearly uprisings happening in France that you may not be seeing on the like corporate media that you may watch, but there are some accounts online. I think it's good to just remember that the French are a people too, although very colonial and colonizing the whole world. The working class in French also are people who band together usually to like stop a lot of the things that politicians have in place. And I think so. Like I do know that there are racial issues in France that are very
It's segregated as
yes, very segregated and have been like long standing. But I do feel that oftentimes the French do band together to kind of fight like as a working class in ways that the United States just can't really do because we don't have as many like unions and systems like that in place. It's an interesting story, and I just feel like I think it makes sense that world leaders wouldn't want to seen this type of information, or and it's not. It doesn't. It may sound like, oh, I'm being
it's not, it doesn't have to be explicit. The corporate partners want to keep a stable world.
just. They want to keep us not. They don't want us doing that. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
They care about money coming in every day.
Oh, absolutely.
They don't want disruption.
No one does.
That's the thing. So like corporate media, corporate interests, we live in a corporate oligopoly, like just not to get too nerdy, but like the world is a corporate oligopoly. It's controlled by corporations. And quite frankly, it has been since Kings. The Dutch India Company is the first corporate oligopoly, that European. And, we've been living under that. It's under the pressures of what corporations, with some like ebb and pull on who has a little more power than they used to. Even in the height of unions and stuff in the United States in the 1950s and all that stuff, they still had minuscule power because the corporations could corrupt the union leaders, and then they used that as part of their plan to destroy unions during the 70s, 80s, 90s, and today. They corrupted the people at the top of those unions, and that's where hierarchies will inherently fail. You can always corrupt the person at the top. So whether it's a union hierarchy, it's a workplace hierarchy, it's a fucking corporate hierarchy, it doesn't matter. Like even in corporations, CEOs or people high up are fucking over the corporation, and eventually they get caught because the corporation will always win. So if you're like doing some embezzlement, the reason you get caught is because you're taking from a bigger person, a bigger entity, even if you're part of that bigger entity. It's snake eating its tail. And this is why the fascists always ultimately lose. They self-defeat themselves, but they take a lot of with them, more of us really. And that's the problem. So we must resist. We must think about things we can control. And the thing with the French, these are happening in localities, so it's spread out. So it's organized, and they're not posting about it on social media. It's small independent journalists that are capturing stuff. So like there's a lot of speculation on how it's even being organized, and I just have solidarity with them, so I'm not even going to do the work for the government to even speculate, give them any information. No snitching. But the point is, communities are doing this. People within communities that are willing to do it, and they're doing it, and they're taking their power back. And yeah, could the state eventually just crush them? Yeah. Yep. That's the risk they're taking, and it's the doom they're facing. But they're fighting for the right reasons. I mean, these systems hurt people, and we're sick of it. People are sick of it. So, that's the Ghouler and Tomfoolery, baby. So that's the headlines for this week, and look forward to doing it again in the future. Hope everybody's having an okay time dealing with the heat wave and the water deluges of July in Massachusetts. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can go to our website, www.theweedout.com, follow us on social media, support local journalism. I don't know what else to say, really. I mean, the headlines we got were all from corporate media, and we had to really talk about it to understand it. Support local media like The Shoestring and Andrew Camere, Dusty Christensen, and The Weed Out. Support us, like us, share us, follow us. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Take care.